Okay, we are recording the session.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Wonen. One more time, welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to have all of you here online with us at Cloud Data Driven Online User Group. We would like to say thanks to Wagner Chaves. Last year we have Wagner, and this year we have him again. It's really a pleasure. Wagner's topic is implementing generative AI model with Azure OpenAI service. However, before I hand it over to Wagner, I'd like to introduce our community. So for your information, this session will be recorded. If you do not want to be part of the recording session, feel free, for example, to do the needful. And it will be publicly available on our YouTube channel. And we are three. I am the founder and the secondary co-organizer. We have Wonen. He is the primary organizer of the entire data-driven community. And we also have Anna Maria Wakis as a second co-organizer. So me and Anna, we are the second, and Woden is the primary. If you do have any question, feel free to reach out to either one of us. However, I highly suggest you to reach out to Wonen or Anna for any quick presentation or question related to the data community. We are an online user group meeting, therefore understanding diversity and inclusions matter. This community is part of Microsoft Data Community Platform. With that, we highly encourage you to engage and do it with respect. And there must be no offensive comment. And if you have a question, feel free to type it. Travis will let you know how you would like to handle the question. And there's a tons of free event. We have Psychobit that is going on. It's not too late to register. We also have a tons of Psycho Saturday. And if you're looking at right here, these are some extra community you could visit. And then there's Microsoft Learn. I highly suggest you to keep that as your favorite browser. And this is a QR code if you want. I'm not sure if this is still usable, Wonen, but you can still use it if you want a discount from Psychobit. And one more thing is that we have a call for speaker for featured data driven. We also have PASS data community call for speaker is open. I highly suggest you to go and submit your session. If you do want to present a session, please work with Wonen or Anna. But as Wonen is the primary person, I highly suggest you to reach out to Wonen, and then he will schedule you, or you are free to reach out to me as well. So therefore, with that, I'm gonna pass over to Travis. Travis, it's always a pleasure to have you, and we can't wait to learn from you. And feel free to share your screen, introduce yourself, and start with the presentation.
Sounds
Thanks.
good. Appreciate it, John. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for everybody that's here today. Let me start sharing my screen and make sure everything is working. And you guys can see my PowerPoint. All right. So I assume that you see the title page, Implementing Gen AI Models with Azure OpenAI. I want to take the time to thank everybody that is with me here today, wherever you
Yes,
might
I
be in
can
the
see
world.
it.
Yeah, okay, excellent. So appreciate taking the time. You could be doing something else, but you decided to take an hour of your day to learn with me today, and I really appreciate that. All right, so allow me to introduce myself. I've been a data solutions consultant for my full IT career has been 18 years. I started as a DBA, actually, working for Hewlett Packard a long time ago. I'm now a solutions architect at Pythian. Pythian is a services company based out of Ottawa, Ontario, in Canada, and also Minnesota in the United States. We do have a US office as well. I'm honored to still be a Microsoft Data Platform MVP 9 years in a row. And you can reach out to me on Twitter, my email right there, my personal one, warner@createdatapros.com. Um, my employer, which sponsors some of the things we do for the community as well, we do have our own blog as well at pythian.com that goes beyond what I cover. Usually I cover the Microsoft stack, everything related to data and AI, but Pythian as a services company does more than that. And you can read way beyond about that, other technologies, other platforms in our company blog as well. And feel free as well. I love to connect on LinkedIn with anybody that joins any of my sessions. So if you search Warner Chaves on LinkedIn, you will only find me as the only solutions architect at Pythian with that name. It's pretty easy to find me, and feel free to connect. All right. Um, Before we go on the agenda, I just want to say I'll take some pauses every now and then, and we'll do questions. So I won't do them as we go, but I'll take some pauses in certain places, and we'll make sure that everybody gets their questions covered. If not, obviously, I'll leave some time near the end for us to go through that as well. So the agenda for today is I'm just going to do a quick intro on the slides. There's not a lot of slides. There's like 8 slides tops. And then we'll do a guided tour of all the Azure capabilities that Microsoft has been frantically building in the product um, for about 1 year now, since the first release of the Azure OpenAI service to what we have today in terms of capabilities to building Gen AI applications. As well, I'm going to share with you a really cool Gen AI app that Microsoft has developed. It's kind of like a ChatGPT clone, but everything is open source and built with Azure components so that people can learn how everything connects and kind of works under the hood. So I will share that as well. All right. So most of it is going to be demos. Let's rock and roll. First, let's set the stage for generative AI because I don't know, you guys are probably, you're in the IT industry, everybody's just talking about AI, AI, but really the new part of AI that people are talking about is generative AI, right? It's not just AI as a whole, right? AI as a whole has existed for a long time. Machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence, and machine learning algorithms and neural networks have existed for several decades even, right? But generative AI and really what we see now and what most people are calling AI is fairly new in terms of hitting the mainstream, right? November of 2022, I believe, is when OpenAI released ChatGPT, and the rest is going to be history right at that point, right? So we at that point the main audience of the mainstream audience of the world discovered this new type of artificial intelligence that would create new content, right? That's really the innovation, is that it can create new content, and because it can create new content, it can interact with the world, right? It can tell you in a picture what it sees because it's creating an answer based on the input of the image, right? So it can do that with text, like people use ChatGPT. It can do it with images, right? The OpenAI has a model called Dall-e. We can look at it in the demo that generates images. It can now do that also with audio, synthesizing new audio. And we even have now the capability of AI generated video. I don't know if any of you have played around with it. I don't have a demo for that, but if you're really interested, you can check out Runway. There's a company called Runway ML. You can download the app on your phone. You say, oh, I want a pigeon flying, and boom, it generates like a 3-second video of a pigeon flying. So it's very early days for the video generation, especially, but it is still pretty amazing how this technology has gotten extended in just a year to do all sorts of kinds of media, right? So, like I said, most people have experienced Gen AI through either something like ChatGPT or Bing Chat or image generators like Dall-e or Midjourney. And this is kind of like what we're used to seeing, right? It's, oh, I'm going to ask something, and then it's the agent or the AI is going to give me an answer. Here I asked what is the origin story of Pythian, Pythian being the company that I work for. And what it tells me is a story about the Pythian games, right? That was the name of a games back in ancient Greece, and that's actually the origin of the name of the company as well, right? So this is kind of like what we think in mind when we say, when we think about, we're interacting with AI, and that's fair. But this is a consumer version of the AI, right? You go on your phone, you go on your computer. What we want to explore today is how is this actually built, and how we can use Azure as well to build our own AI experiences that we can either sell to other people, we can use ourselves, or we can use inside our organizations, right? So we think about it, and this is where, there's a difference between how the end user will consume, let's say something like ChatGPT, versus how an enterprise will want to use AI, right? And that's where Azure really is really strong, is in creating either not really a user, an end user, um, um, let's say experience, right? ChatGPT is an end user experience. So copilot.microsoft.com is an end user experience, but you can use the Azure OpenAI service to really build custom solutions for the enterprise, right? So a consumer would say, oh, I want to use the AI to get a recipe or to plan a road trip or something like that. Whereas an enterprise will want to look at it in like, okay, I want the data analyst to be able to summarize a lot of documents using AI. I want to automate service interactions for customer support. What models do I have available? What are the constraints on those models? How can we make sure that people don't misuse them? How do we merge this new technology, the LLMs and chat agents and all this stuff with our existing governance and security policies, right? We don't want to just let everybody have a free reign of everything. How do we track and manage the cost of using the LLMs? And how do we integrate them into apps and platform? And again, these are the strengths of something like Azure, where we are hosting the models and the AI compute inside that Azure walled garden, where we have already set up our security and our governance and so on, right? So that's where Azure OpenAI service comes into play, and not just the OpenAI service, but also the bigger umbrella of the Azure AI. I'm going to try to see if we have time, and I'll show also the Azure AI Studio, where now we have even open source models and everything. So why Azure? And specifically for OpenAI, if you want to use the GPT models, is that Microsoft is a major investor in OpenAI. Microsoft also allows you to have elastic capacity of GPU power. You have a huge variety of regions where Azure is deployed and where the OpenAI service is available. You have your built-in security, governance, compliance, right? If you have already let's say you're going to create a new team of AI engineers, you can go into your Azure Active Directory, create a new group, put the users there, and only give those users access to your OpenAI service. All that is already built so that you have a governed development, governed use of the AI as well. This cloud scale for your data. So if you want to feed your data into your AI models, and we'll look into that in a bit, you have already some services in Azure as well. And we'll look at Microsoft's demo applications architecture as well. And there's so many other services that you have available, right, to build a solution. You have cloud storage, you have web apps, you have document intelligence, which I'll just show you as well. Document intelligence can be used to parse documents, to parse PDFs, all kinds of stuff, all ready so that you can put together all the pieces of the puzzle for whatever it is that you are building, right? So one question that I get often is, okay, Microsoft has these Azure OpenAI models, but doesn't OpenAI, if I want to use GPT, already offer an enterprise option? And the answer is yes, OpenAI does offer an enterprise option where they say, we are not going to train our models on your data. Microsoft obviously makes the same guarantee. And we are going to bill you based on API calls. It's not going to be just, flat $20 a month per user like ChatGPT Premium is. But even in that case, I still believe Azure is a better fit for the enterprise because of, for example, region availability. If you want, I'm sitting here in Canada, there is some data in Canada that is regulated, like for example, healthcare, that has a data sovereignty requirements. I cannot move that data outside of Canada without being in breach of the regulation. So let's say I want to create an healthcare enabled AI experience. I have to guarantee that that data stays in Canada. So I could deploy the Azure OpenAI service in one of the Canadian data centers, and that guarantees me the region availability that I'm not violating data sovereignty regulations, right? So that's a huge plus for Azure, right? With all the different hubs that it has around the world. Same with the US, same with Europe. Um, Latency improvement, right? If your users are in a specific place, then you can deploy to an Azure regions that is close to them. If you already have a lot of data in Azure, then you can place the compute for your AI close to the data to provide a better experience with lower latency. It supports tighter security architectures as opposed to the OpenAI Enterprise. All you get is you get basically an enterprise um, API key, and then you just interact through the OpenAI Internet API. That's how the enterprise works for OpenAI directly. But on Azure, you can deploy the Azure OpenAI service and protect it with only allowing a specific IPs that go into your API for the OpenAI service, only allow it a specific AD groups that can interact with the OpenAI service. So it can be much tighter in terms of security than what you can achieve with just using the OpenAI API, for example. And then obviously, as you're being an Azure consumer at that point, so Azure support is going to be the one that supports it in terms of the technical issues, in terms of legal and compliance questions that you might have, especially if you want to do AI with some highly regulated data or in a highly regulated industry. And Azure um, provides, like I said, many different services and things that we can use so that we integrate our AI solution with the rest of the Azure platform, right? And there's a big menu of models already. I'll show the list on the documentation in a little bit once we jump into the demo. But we have now multi-model models, so the models that can generate images, that can do text. We have GPT-4 Turbo. The latest version is already available with Vision as well. With Vision was just enabled, I believe, at the end of last year, so just a couple of months ago. Um, if you just want to do text-based, we have GPT 3.5 all the way to 4 Turbo. 3.5 is let's say, the last year later version, or sorry, earlier version of GPT. But for many text-based processing tasks, 3.5 is really good, and it is cheaper than 4 and 4 Turbo. There's a model for creating embeddings. Embeddings are basically very big number vectors that represent documents. They can be used to basically help the AI chat with your data, right? You index a document, it creates a numerical embedding, and then with those numerical embeddings, the system can, based on what you're talking about, will retrieve a document and then give that document to the AI for the AI to talk to you about the document, basically. If you want to do image generation, there's Dall-e 2. Now there's Dall-e 3 in preview. The quality of the images between Dall-e 2 and Dall-e 3 is just like miles of difference. Dall-e 2 still generated really ugly images, people with like, weird arms and, ugly faces and stuff like that, like just nothing in place. Dall-e 3 is way better at generating images, and now Dall-e 3 is in preview as well. And finally, OpenAI also has an audio to text model. So this is a model that does transcription, basically, called the Whisper, that is hosted inside Azure as well. All right. And that's all I'm going to have in terms of slides. I'm going to take a pause here, see if we have any questions. And if not, like I said, we'll just jump right into the demo.
This is a great opportunity to remind everyone, please use the chat for questions and for discussions as well. This is a user group. We are flexible with the time a bit, so use the chat.
All right, so so after I'll start the demo, and then, like I said, in a few minutes I'll take another pause, and we'll do like 2 or 3 question breaks, and we'll also have it at the end. All right, so this is what we're gonna look. I'm gonna walk through the Azure AI different experiences in terms of the different OpenAI Studio and the AI Studio that Microsoft has on Azure now, and we'll also look at the Microsoft Sample application. This is what the sample application is. It is a web app that hosts a chat application, and it also interacts with the Azure OpenAI service to talk to all the different AI agents. And it also has cognitive search. If you look at the top left of the screen there, you'll see that cognitive search is used to bring in relevant parts of documents back into the AI. See where the arrow says top paragraphs. And then to extract the information from the documents, we're using the Azure AI Document Intelligence. And I'll show you the AI Document Intelligence Studio as well, just to give you an idea really of what's happening behind the scenes in the code too. To actually keep track of the interactions in the chat, this solution is using Azure Cosmos DB, a great fit for that. And it's also obviously protected with Azure Active Directory. I'm already logged into it, but just to say, obviously, if you develop any sort of app or solution that is built in Azure, it's going to be easily integrated to your security policies that you're using in Azure AD or Entra ID, I guess we call it these days. All right. So the demo, the code for the demo can be found in this. This is, like I said, a public application that Microsoft has developed and has been continuously supporting for about a year now. And I've used the different versions of this app back in the early days when they started, and the version from today. I actually, in preparation for today, I synced up my code a couple of days ago, and I deployed the very latest version so that we can see all the different capabilities that Microsoft has been bundling into this demo application. All right, so first thing we're gonna do is, sorry, let me go back to the browser. And this is the Azure OpenAI regular service blade. All right, so here's where you can see all the different OpenAI resources that you might have deployed. If you guys can see here, I have quite a bit because I play around with this quite a bit, all the way from Canada all the way to like Sweden, right? This is what I mean again in terms of, well, you want to place some of these resources close to where your users might be, or if you have some kind of data sovereignty requirement or anything like this, then you can take advantage of this type of region availability, right? So however, you don't interact with the actual models here in this kind of like classic Azure portal blade, right? What you do is Microsoft has actually created a couple of different experiences for dealing with these models. So we have this Azure OpenAI Studio, and this was created first when the OpenAI service just came out, but they're still maintaining it. And then we also have the more general Azure AI Studio. Okay, and the Azure AI Studio incorporates the OpenAI models, but it also goes beyond just the AI models. And I'll show that in a little bit. We'll just start here with the OpenAI Studio. So if you see here in the OpenAI Studio, it gives you the whole menu of all the different models available. Here I have a couple of deployments. You see I deployed inside this one right now. Inside this one, I believe I'm in the Swedish one. You see here, Sweden Central. The reason why I'm in Sweden, by the way, and I'm sitting in Canada, is because in Sweden they deployed the preview of the Vision model. I don't know why Microsoft decided to pick Sweden to deploy the preview of the Vision model, but that's what they decided. So that's why I ended up an account with a resource in Sweden. Um, I'm not anywhere close to Sweden. So you can see here I have two models deployed right now. If I wanted to, I could deploy more things, right? You see here I have all the different models available as well, all the way from GPT 3.5 Turbo to 3.5 Turbo 16K. By the way, if you're not familiar with these numbers, you'll see some of these have these numbers at the end. So 16K, 32K, for example, all these are the context windows for the models. And the context window basically is how much information you can pass into the model in a call, and the model will use that as the input to generate the answer, right? So the bigger the context windows, the more information you can shove into the model into one call. Right now, the largest OpenAI context window is 128,000 tokens. OpenAI says that's about 300 pages of a document. Um, these AI companies are all working hard to compete with each other in terms of this context window capability. So there's another company very popular as well called Anthropic. They have a model called Claude. Claude is like their GPT equivalent, and Claude, I believe, is up to 200,000 tokens. Google has now their Gemini family of models. Google says that they have a version of Gemini in private preview, not ready for public preview yet, but they say in private preview they have a model that is all the way up to 1 million tokens in context, right? And obviously the biggest idea or the biggest driver here is to be able to feed more and more information to the LLMs and get larger and larger interactions and responses so that you can do more things and in one shot with more data, especially for something like code generation, for example. You'll be able to pass in more code to the LLM to be able to do some analysis on the code or rewrites or anything like that, right? So a lot of different versions of the models. You said you pick the version, what do you want? You give the deployment a name, and there's some advanced options here. You can create different content filters. There's a couple of different deployments nowadays. There's the standard deployment. Well, this one doesn't have the other mode, but I think maybe 4 has the new deployment mode. Yeah, so if you see here at the bottom, sorry, here. So you see there's standard deployment mode where you get um, you pay per token, but if you're going to use it a lot, there's also a new provision managed model. So I believe it has a higher price where you start, but the price per token is actually lower, but you pay, it's provisioned. So if you don't consume the tokens, then you're still paying for it, right? It's only if you're going to develop more like a real solution that is ready for production and you want to save the capacity for your users, then you will go into like a provisioned mode, right? And then you have quotas as well. So you can't just run up as many tokens as you want. Microsoft has to manage their resources in the cloud, especially GPUs nowadays. Apparently, and people can't buy enough GPUs from NVIDIA and AMD. And so there is some quotas here. So you'll see, for example, I have a quota of requests per minute for Dall-e. I can only do something like 2 requests per minute. That's for image generation. So that's pretty low for like a real application. But here for the playground, just to play around with it, you can just work with that. And then if you really wanted to deploy a production app that's going to generate a bunch of images per minute, then you can request the quota increase from Microsoft, figure out what the pricing would be for something like that, right? But this is for the actual image generation. Image generation is more compute intensive, obviously. If you look at something like text, let's say we go to GPT 3.5 Turbo, then its tokens per minute is measured in the thousands of tokens per minute. And I'm allowed 300,000 tokens per minute. So that's a lot more, right? 300,000 tokens per minute is a lot of text. Like OpenAI was saying 128 thousand tokens is about 300 pages. So 300,000 tokens, we're looking at something like, I don't know, 800 pages of text in 1 minute. So it's pretty good to develop, definitely, and to get going. And if you needed to, you can request an increase in quota. There is
Orna,
yeah.
there are a lot of questions in the chat. Some are really good
All right.
questions.
Let me finish. Let me
If it's
finish
okay
going
with
through this.
you, yeah, go ahead. Just
So I'm gonna finish the
remember
OpenAI
that we are more
Studio, and we'll
flexible.
take a break. So
Awesome.
um, So just to finish here, like the OpenAI experience. So in the playground, you can chat with these agents. And the idea here is that you get a feel for how the agents behave and you can tweak their parameters. This is if you work with OpenAI as well, OpenAI has its own playground with a very similar experience, right? You can tweak some of the parameters that go in the model, like the temperature, like the size of the response, if you don't know what the temperature is basically make the model less creative or more creative. And you can, interact with the model here and see what it would say, right? So you can say something like, hello, GPT, and then GPT will answer back, hello, how can I assist you today? If you want to test a different persona for GPT to give it a different system prompt, you can put it here. You see, for example, right now it's just the default says you're an AI assistant that helps people find information, very generic, but there's other ones, right? For example, Microsoft provides some as examples, an Xbox customer support agent, and now the prompt says, "Oh, you're an Xbox customer support agent whose primary goal is to help users with issues with their Xbox." So it kind of sets the persona of the AI agent to a different different value, right? I'll go back to my default. All right, and then in the playground here, you can also, there's the playground here just for the chat models. There's the playground for Dall-e. Dall-e is the image generator. You see here, the little monster that is creating. You can type whatever it is that you might want. And there's also, this is brand new, is the Assistance API. If you use OpenAI, the Assistance API basically allows you not only to do custom personas for your different agents, but it also allows you to give the agents custom data, and it allows you to give the agents the ability to um, call some functions or even to do some compute on your behalf. So this is very new. I haven't played around yet with the assistants. So I'm not gonna go deep into the demo on this because I literally just noticed it a couple of weeks ago and I haven't had time to play around with it. But you can see here, it says you can add files, upload up to 20 files, the max of 512 megs. So if you're feeding some documentation, that might be enough. If not, you'll have to use another approach like what I just showed in the architecture of the demo chat that we'll look in a bit, where it actually uses the Microsoft Search and the Microsoft Cosmos DB and all these other services. But if you're looking at something smaller, easier to manage, you can create these assistants now. They are in preview in the OpenAI Studio as well. All right, so all right, let's take a pause here and let's look at the questions.
Okay, it seems like we have a lot of people that are in the first steps of using AI, so questions are repeating themselves.
No,
The
it's all
first
good.
question is, you want to go through them, or I will summarize because there is a
Yeah, no,
question
just
that
give me the
repeats
summary.
itself.
That's okay. Give me the summary.
Okay, so the first question is Azure OpenAI is a Microsoft managed first party Azure service?
Yes, yeah. So the OpenAI service is all hosted in Azure Compute and Azure data centers. This Microsoft has the partnership with OpenAI, and it's a lot of money. Microsoft is like I believe is like a 49% investor at this point. So it's not going away anytime soon. And all this is hosted inside Azure data centers, follows the same data sovereignty rules. They're not going to train on your data and all that kind of jazz. Yeah.
Following the question we have afterward, I think that it meant more about, is it third party company, which is
It is. It's not
OpenAI,
Microsoft
or
itself.
it's
OpenAI is a separate company. Yeah.
exactly.
But the service
Uh,
is managed by Microsoft, 100%.
okay, so you don't need anything outside the Azure. This is one of
Nope.
the next questions.
Yep, that's a
Okay,
great question.
I don't know what the next question mean. Is it RAG based? I'm not sure what is RAG.
So RAG, Prachi has been reading stuff about this and has been playing around with it. RAG is retrieval augmented generation, and the basically what it means is that you grab a document from somewhere else, maybe like a vector database or like a search service, and then that's the retrieval part. Then you feed it back to the AI, and then the AI does the generation. And yes, you can do RAG with Azure OpenAI 100%. One way to do it is using the assistants, like we were just saying. That's brand new in preview, where you can feed just a small amount of data. It's all managed. You create the assistants. Another way to do RAG is to do it more like a full-blown application, which I'll demo in a little bit, that uses Cosmos DB or uses Azure Intelligent Search. I think it's called AI Search now. But you can build RAG with that kind of services as well. Yep. Access to
There was
OpenAI
a
models
general
is free. Definitely not free, but it's not terrible either. It charges per token, and it's just cents per token. If you're not abusing it, it's just a few bucks.
regarding the general question about courses. Obviously, there are a lot of courses. Just use any search engine to find. There are even courses at Microsoft Learn, so you can check there as well.
Yes,
So
I see
regarding
that.
is
Yeah,
it
there's a
free?
lot of learning material nowadays. Yeah.
Is it free? I will add to the question. You already mentioned it's not free, but related to the first question, uh, if we pay it for the Azure subscription, so we don't need anything else. It's all through the Azure. this cover another question.
Yeah, the billing is done through Azure.
Okay, what is the security level of the analyst data? Is it shared with external service?
No, it's like I said, it's all inside Azure. It's all inside the Azure data center. Never leaves the Azure data center. So if you place your data within the same region as your OpenAI, then it's literally in the same region. If you place your data somewhere outside of the same region, but it's still Azure, then it's still just Azure to Azure communication. But it is not being transmitted to OpenAI as a separate entity, as a separate company. It's all inside the Microsoft Azure universe, let's call it.
A small question for us, the organizer, could you get a recording? We already said in the opening, we try to record all our meeting. This meeting is recorded. If there are no technical issue, we will publish it. Please follow us on social media for just more information. There was a question from someone who is beginner in terms of Azure OpenAI, what license is required?
Well, you don't need a license. All you need is to have an Azure subscription, right? And but
So you
but
don't
it
need,
doesn't cover the Azure free. I don't think Azure free covers any of this stuff. You'll have to, attach a credit card so that they can charge you for usage. But if you stick to the Azure AI like the OpenAI Studio or the AI Studio, and just the playgrounds, they just charge you per token, and it's not a lot of money. When it gets really expensive is if you start to do like permanent deployments of, like, let's say, custom models. So you created a custom model and then you deploy it as an endpoint, and now you have, like, basically behind the scenes a permanent web API that is representing your model. And that's when it gets like more expensive, right? Because that's more for like a real production scenario. But if you just want to learn, it's not really that expensive because you just pay per token kind of thing.
but the license is not external. That's the question. You don't need a go to OpenAI and get a license.
No, no, no.
So if
All
you
you
have
need is
a
an
Azure
Azure
subscription,
subscription. Yeah.
okay. I think that, we have a last question. I didn't read it yet. Can I connect to Azure OpenAI to tabular model?
All right. So I've never seen anybody try to do that. I mean, technically you can. That would be like a different way to do RAG, right? You would have to have some sort of code that would look into the tabular model to figure out what it is that you're trying to talk to and figure out what it is that you're trying to extract from it. It's definitely not trivial. I haven't seen anything online yet of somebody developing like a connector or something for something like that. Um, it's probably a complicated thing to develop on your own, I would say. But what I would also say is that for these first party Microsoft products, there's a good possibility that Microsoft is going to work on these eventually, right? Because Microsoft is working hard to put co-pilots everywhere. So I wouldn't be surprised if eventually we have like a co-pilot on the Visual Studio that allows you to open a tabular model and then chat, right? But is not there yet, right? How is Claude versus GPT models in terms of accuracy and security? Depends on who you ask, right? If you ask Anthropic, they'll say that Claude is the best. If you ask OpenAI, they'll say that GPT is the best. I have heard just in the last few days that Claude 3 is apparently very accurate. In terms of security, it depends on if you how much you trust any of these vendors, right? If you trust Anthropic more than would you trust OpenAI, more than would you would trust Microsoft. If you already have your data inside Azure, then you have already basically agreed to all of Microsoft's security postures, right? Because you put your data there. So it makes sense, in my opinion. If I was a CIO, I would think, well, if we already said yes to putting our data in Azure, then it just makes sense to use our AI agents hosted in Azure as well, right? Because it lives inside that same security garden. All right. Last
Great,
one.
thanks a lot.
Yeah. So that's just one
It's
more.
repeat himself. Let's continue. We will summarize again.
Available data sources, hybrid model. Yeah, well, it could, but you have to code this, right? So this is support hybrid model that would do an answer based on data and also from the internet at the same time. You have to all these different combinations, you would have to like kind of build them yourself, right? It can do the part where it can get an answer on provided data. It can also grab information from the internet. At some point, if you want something very custom, you have to roll your sleeves and write some code that would grab something from, like, say, a vector database, grab something from the internet, and then put it all together, right? All right, so let's get back to good question break, by the way. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen again, and we'll get back to the AI studio. So I just want to show here, we got about 20 minutes to go. I want to leave some more time near the end for more questions. Um, so two things we're going to check still, the AI Studio, the chat application from Microsoft, and some of the backend for the chat application. The AI Studio, what I really wanted to show everybody is just how much more stuff is available now outside of OpenAI. So I've worked with the OpenAI models for quite a bit since GPT-3 came out, like I said, back in like December of 2022. So I'm really comfortable using them. I like using them. But nowadays, there is a lot of different companies getting into this space, and you might want to look at some of the other models that are available. So the Azure AI Studio, really, what it has is a large amount of models available to deploy on Azure. So you see here, for example, Mistral. This is a company that is based out of France that is making a big splash with their Mistral models. They are apparently one of some of the best open models that are available. Facebook, also known as Meta, has the Llama models. Llama 2 is the latest version of this model, and apparently, again, is one of the best open models that you can use. OpenAI models, of course, exclusively available on Azure. And other than that, there's a lot of different ones. For example, the Falcon models were developed by, I think it's a university in the United Arab Emirates. And it's another open model as well. You got all these Mistral models. Databricks has created a model as well for text generation. So all to say is that there is a lot here. I don't know. I know, for example, that a lot of people say Mistral and Llama are really good if you want to use a model that is open. Open meaning that you could download it and run it on your own hardware if you wanted to, if you didn't want to just host it in the cloud. But like I said, my personal experience is mostly with the OpenAI models, but I did want to show that this is here now and it is available. The other thing I wanted to show, and this is something that I'm not going to go in depth because honestly, I'm still learning this stuff as well because everything is getting developed really aggressively. Very, very new stuff gets added all the time. But I did want to show, for example, Microsoft is also investing in tools to create workflows where you feed different data to the model, kind of like what we were just getting asked about. Oh, I want to do like a hybrid thing where I grab something from a document database and then I also grab a web search and I can mix it together and then I give it to the AI. So Microsoft is working on this thing called prompt flows. Like I said, I'm not going to go in depth here on this because I'm still wrapping my head around it. But you can see here where the prompt flow is basically kind of like a way to add different inputs to the chat and then different outputs. And you can chain these activities in different ways and even add steps with code with Python if you wanted to, right? So you see here, you have a prompt step, for example, where you can create a prompt based on different things. You can add LLM steps where you can actually, that's when you send the information to the model and get a response back. And you have even the ability to add Python steps if you want to run some code on some of this information, all right? So you could have something um, to the point that somebody was just asking, right? You could have a Python step where it grabs the web search results, another Python step where it grabs the information from your document database, and then you have a prompt step that mixes the information from both of them, and then from that prompt step, it feeds it into the LLM, and then boom, you get your output, right? So all this is brand new experiences that Microsoft is working really hard and investing a lot of research and development to create, right? So this is called prompt flow. I'm really excited about learning some more about prompt flow and started to create some of these custom things like member was just asking about these kind of like hybrid experiences. But I haven't gotten to it. It's something that I wish, I hope I have some time in the next few months to develop something. Hopefully, maybe I'll be back even here at the user group, and then we can make like a prompt flow dedicated session, because it looks like we can definitely spend an hour or more just on this type of experiences that we can enable now with prompt flow and some of these other things, right? So very, very cool. If you see here, we do have playgrounds as well, similar to how we had the playground for the OpenAI studio. There is a playground for other models. So for example, if I wanted to deploy Mistral, for example, then I could do a playground experience with Mistral, right, which is a model that is not from OpenAI. Also, if here, I just wanted to show the evaluation. So this is another area where I want to I need to study more as well into what all these evaluations are, because what happens is that basically you can create new evaluations and then create different ways for um, the system to send some questions to the AI and then score the answers from the AI. And then the cool thing about it is that, let's say, for example, you can then evaluate, let's say, GPT-4 versus Mistral 7, Mistral Large, which I think is the big or like the main Mistral model. And then it'll create an evaluation and say, well, based on the questions that you sent and the answers that you wanted to get back, then GPT-4 is better or Mistral does better and stuff like that. So this is another area that I think is going to be really important for people to put these apps in production, is to be able to evaluate them and compare the different models. So that is something that is there is some tools available here now as well. I think again this could be something where um, likely we could do a whole session just about how to evaluate the models, but I'm looking forward to also playing around with some of these newer tools and figuring out how they work, the best way to use them, and hopefully come back and do a session on some of these as well. um,
We have the Future Data Driven Summit upcoming, call for speaker
that's
open.
true.
We are waiting
Yeah.
for you.
Yes, that'll give me something, a deadline to start working and getting something together for these. So, so this is the AI Studio, and then the last thing I want to show. This is for this you need an Azure. For this you actually need an Azure subscription, and it's going to be something that you need to put your credit card and everything, because it deploys a bunch of Azure resources. But this is application provided by Microsoft. As I said before, if you look here at the top, it's github.com Microsoft Azure Chat, and it gives you that experience kind of like ChatGPT does, but it's all using Azure components and it's open source. So you can open the code, you can see what it's doing, you can see how it interacts with the other Azure services. So for example, I can say here, hello GPT, are you there? And yeah, I'm here to help. How can I assist you today? You can say something like, for example, if this one can do a RAG, retrieval augmented generation. So I have an incident report here from my one of my DBA teams from a couple of years ago. So you'll see it is processing the document and it will upload it. See, it's indexed now. Here it says incident report, blocking and slowness has been uploaded successfully. And now I can chat with GPT about this document. So I can say, GPT, can you summarize this incident for me? What went wrong? And then you'll see the incident involved blocking and slowness in a RIM AG. And then this resulted in end users experiencing slowness. Technical impact was that the Tivoli backup system was unable to back up the databases and so on, right? And then people always ask me here, is, well, okay, but what did that document look like? So that document was actually, it's a PDF document. You'll see here, it's a pretty standard form we used to use at Python for doing this stuff. And the way it works behind the scenes is it uses this called document intelligence. And I'm going to actually upload this same document here. And you'll see I can run the analysis on it. and boom, it splits out all the different sections, right? So if you look here on this side, um, so if you look on the side here, there we go. So this document intelligence service is able to read the PDF and then split it into the headings. It says, okay, here's the next paragraph. Here's another paragraph. Here's another heading. Here's another paragraph, right? You see where they're all identified. So this is, again, where Azure really shines in terms of building a solution that uses all these different capabilities, right? So the document gets split into different parts by the document intelligence. The chat history is all kept inside Cosmos DB. So you see here, for example, where is this? You see here's this first item. Oh, sorry, here. So all these different items, they are maintaining the history of my chat, right? So you see here it says, "Hi GPT, what can you tell me about?" Right? That's when I was just asking, tell me something about the incident, right? So Cosmos DB is used to keep the history of the different chats that are created, and then search is used as well for the retrieval of the documents, right? So you see here, like I mentioned before, it uses something called an embeddings model to basically take a piece of text and then represent it as an array of numbers. I believe these arrays have about 1,500 different elements. So you see here on the screen, right? It's like all the all the green bits here. These are all the numbers that represent a particular document, right? So you see here, but that's how it works, right? So then basically, when I ask or when I chat with the agent, then there's an algorithm behind the scenes that takes the what I just asked about, and then using the vector for what I just asked about, it calculates the distance between the different vectors of the documents inside the search index, and then it retrieves the ones that are it thinks are more relevant based on that math to the AI agent, feeds it to the AI agent, and then the AI agent gives me an answer back. And actually, you can see here this implementation from Microsoft. It gives you the references of where in the text exactly it's telling you the information that it used to produce this particular summary, right? So that's something that's pretty cool. It gives you the citations, and this is a really good way to also avoid the problem of the AI agents, what people call hallucinating or fabricating information, right? Where the AI agents come up with answers of things that are not accurate or that they just made up, kind of thing, right? So that's a problem that happens, but with the right strategy here, like the retrieval, asking for citations, forcing it to use references to answer and stuff like that, the problem is largely mitigated, right? And like I said, the nice thing about this app that Microsoft developed and you can deploy is all the code is available on GitHub. You can look at all the code, how they developed all this. You can see how they use the Document Intelligence Studio to do this bit here, to break down the document in paragraphs, how they interact with Cosmos DB to save the chat history, how they use the search engine, the AI search to index and do searches on these documents, and play around with it yourself, right? You can play around with it, create chats, and see what the capabilities are of these AI models on an actual, you know, application that you can check the code and play with it, right? And if you just want to play around with the models and see what they can do, you can always either go into the playgrounds in the Azure AI Studio, or if you're just going to do something quick directly just with OpenAI, then you can work with the OpenAI chat playground as well, right? So all right, so we just have about 5 minutes to go. I'm gonna pause here again and see if we have
Before
any other
you go,
questions.
yeah, before we start with a question, I want to clarify. You can continue. It's a user group meeting. It's not a conference. We don't have someone after you. So at least 15 minutes. If you feel that you need,
Yeah,
feel free
yeah,
to continue.
Okay, no, we're good. We're
I
good.
notice only one question, which is general question, several times repeated, just to share the links. So I will ask you to send me all the links after the session, and when we publish the recording, I will add in the comment all the links that you want to share.
Yeah, absolutely. No worries. All right, so let me just do my recap and then we'll do some questions and then we'll see if anybody wants to see anything else that I didn't cover. But to summarize, is Gen AI is very early, it's very fast moving space. The fact that it is so early and fast moving also gives everybody in this call market opportunity, right? Because people, companies, organizations are going to be looking for people that are familiar with these technologies and that can enable productivity gains with these technologies, right? If you go in and say, well, I think we can develop our own knowledge-based AI that we can give to our employees to make them more efficient for some particular task. We can use the OpenAI assistance preview. Like, you will be way ahead of most people out there. A lot of people haven't even used ChatGPT. Never mind knowing how it works behind the scenes. So I think it's a great opportunity for everybody. Enterprise needs are unique, as I mentioned, and this is another area where you can be really strong as a professional if you understand not just the AI part, but you also understand what are your enterprise needs as a company and how you can meet them with a solution like Azure OpenAI, right? So Azure allows you to wrap that OpenAI functionality around your enterprise. Very easy to get going, both on the user experience, right, with the playgrounds and the different chats that you can test out, code-wise as well, with all the examples that Microsoft has provided. And now we have even new tools like this prompt flow that I was talking about and the new evaluations that you can create as well. Those, again, will hopefully we'll cover them in a future session. Azure also allows you to pull a full solution together with different services, like I showed the document intelligence, Cosmos DB for chats, history, or anything like that, and also the Azure AI search for doing RAG or retrieval augmented generation, bringing pieces of documents back to the chat and stuff like that. And finally, it is a service that is fully hosted inside Azure. Microsoft partnership with OpenAI does not seem like it's going to go away anytime soon. Microsoft is a massive shareholder at this point. So I expect that the service is going to continue evolving and offering the latest models from OpenAI, the latest APIs, all the latest capabilities. And now it's not just even OpenAI, as I just showed in the AI Studio. Now we have a bunch of other models available from other vendors, Mistral, Meta, Databricks even, and so on. And I'm sure more will get added over time as well. All right. So let me see if we got anything else or if somebody in particular wants to see anything else.
Okay,
All
I
right.
have one question and one
Sure.
comment. First of all, a comment. You mentioned the quote of the subscription. So I want to remind everyone, if you don't know, the quote is not one for everyone, is per the type of the subscription. So you need to check it. For example, there is a sponsors free subscription and MSDN free subscription. You might have different quotes. And a question for you from a different sessions that usually raised, it wasn't asked here, about the token that everyone mentioned. Can you give in a few words a mapping or a simpler way to understand what is a token regarding to actually what we are using? For example, you can say like in general, X times that you ask a question, you are spending. You got my point, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So tokens, they're not exactly words, right? Because tokens might be a word might have more than one token too, right? So for example, a word in English, for example, a word like airport is actually two tokens, right? Because it's air, and it's not just a word, it's air. It would be one token, port is the other token. So the easiest way to do this is a couple of ways. OpenAI has actually a web page where you can measure the tokens in a text. They also have a Python library that you can feed any particular text and it will tell you how many tokens it has. And when you're just playing around with yourself and prototyping something, the playgrounds also keep tabs of your tokens. So let me share quickly, and that will be something that we can definitely just share real easy. So if you see
Oh,
here, I'm in the playground right now, right? And on this side of the screen, you see where it says the current token count, right? And you can see that so far, I just said, hey, ChatGPT, how are you? And he said, oh, I'm great. What can I help you today? Um, it tells me how many we've consumed right here at the bottom, right? So it has 11. I've used 11 out of 8,192 tokens. So what does that mean is that as I interact more with it, I'm going to ask something silly. For example, can you write me a poem about winter in Canada? And then it's going to start writing me some kind of sad poem about how cold it is or whatever, or beautiful the snow is or something. Here, in the heart of the north, where the cold winds blow, lies the land of Canada, cloaked in winter's glow, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so it created something beautiful there. Quite a long poem, actually. But you can see here at the bottom, right, where it is starting to change the input tokens, right? And now as ChatGPT keeps answering, now it jumped from 192 to 222, now it jumped to 270. So the whole conversation has to fit inside the context window, or basically, it will not take that into account once you pass the context window. Now, inside, behind the scenes, for example, something like ChatGPT, what it does is that after a while, um, it will grab the oldest interactions and will summarize them and will put the summary of the oldest interactions into the context window so that it kind of looks like it's an infinite conversation, but it's not. It's always kind of like limited by what the context window can be, right? And that's something, if you've played around with ChatGPT quite a bit, for example, and you've tried to have really long conversations, or you're passing a lot of text and ChatGPT's answering a lot of text, you might have noticed that sometimes it feels like it's starting to forget things that you already discussed with the AI, right? And most likely what is happening is behind the scenes, it is cut in details because it's either summarizing really old parts of the conversation or you just went way past your context window, right? So that's something just to keep in mind, right? And that's why I said the bigger context windows like 128,000 on GPT-4 Turbo or 200,000 on Claude, or Google now claiming that they have this 1 million context window. That's the idea of the larger context windows, is that you can keep feeding more and more information to the LLM to continue the interaction. All right. Okay. What was the other question? There are several shops already using AWS. What does it mean to them to use OpenAI? How easy would it be for them to use GPT? Well, I would say if you're in AWS and you already put all your data in AWS, then just use AWS. I mean, in this case, you could either, if you really like OpenAI, then you could use the general internet OpenAI API. It's protected with HTTPS, which we all use every day to do our banking, for example. Um, but also AWS has their own models, right? AWS actually is partnered with Anthropic, which I just mentioned is the creator of the Claude models. And Claude is probably one, if not the biggest contender to GPT, right? And Claude 3, the latest version, was just released about 3 days ago, I believe. I don't know if it's in AWS or not yet. Claude 2 for sure is in AWS. So I would say, don't look at it just like it's in you have to use OpenAI. I think it's important for everybody that is here. We're all here because we want to learn, right? To use what it's available. So if you have in a company or you're in an organization where they're using AWS and the best model in AWS is Claude, then learn how to work with Claude and interact with Claude, right? Don't limit yourself to a particular vendor, right? Myself, obviously, with Microsoft being one of my focuses, being a Microsoft MVP and so on, I'm leaning more towards OpenAI because Microsoft has that big partnership. But if you work mostly with another stack, then there's definitely tools in all of them now, right? Google Cloud as well has its Gemini family of models. Google has also invested in Anthropic, so Claude can also run in Google Cloud. Um, so yeah, there's any of the cloud providers, the big ones, they all have their own similar experiences as well. All right. All right, what else? Let's see. Does your client start using OpenAI in Azure already? I have customers that are using Azure OpenAI already. Yes, some have prototype kind of chatbot experiences. Others have tried to do other things like using AI to crawl and summarize and improve documents. Some of them are actually using them just for things like code generation. Even us at Pythian internally, for example, um, for many years, it was quite difficult as well to do code migrations and things like that, or you had to pay another party to do it. And we've been trying to leverage some of these more modern tools as well to try to make our own job more efficient and better in general. So yeah, there is definitely people using it nowadays. Let's see what else. Does the max number of tokens limit the size of the vectors used to store document in the vector DB? Um, well, the size of the vector is the size of the vector regardless, right? The actual analysis and indexing is not done by the AI model, so it doesn't really have to do with the AI model. There is a certain amount of text, like the chunk of text, that will be analyzed and will be an entry inside the document database. And then the actual search will grab the more relevant pieces and feed them into the LLM. The question here is though, let's say the search the search can't feed into the LLM a piece of a document that is bigger than the LLM's context window, right? So that's what you have to keep tabs on, and that's where you get this behavior, like I said, where the context window now suddenly gets too big and it chops it off at the top. And so you kind of like see this behavior where it kind of like starts to forget things, for example, right? All right. I experienced that even if I ask the same questions, I get different answers. Why is that? Yes, that's because the models are not deterministic. There's a lot of heuristic parameters that go into the models. If you want the model to be 100% deterministic, then there's a couple of things you have to do. First, the temperature has to be really low because the temperature diminishes the creativity of the model. And second is that's not enough either. Uh, OpenAI, for example, I don't know about the other models, but OpenAI, for example, has introduced a new parameter called the seed. And the idea of the seed is that if you provide the same input text, the same temp parameters, and the input seed, there's a big numerical number, then you will get the same answer, right? But keep in mind, right, the creativity of the models is create the ability to create new content is where the innovation is in the model too, right? So the way that they are designed and trained is for them to not just repeat the same thing with the same input, right? Because the idea, for example, in your case, sure, you might be asking the same thing about winter in Canada, but you're all the way in a different part of the world, and it'll give you a different poem, and that's supposed to be a feature, right? It's not supposed to be a bug. However, for something like an enterprise app, maybe you want it to be more deterministic. Then you have to play around with these other parameters to make it more deterministic. All right, in vector embeddings, all the data stored in one location. It is also store-based table with embedding. No, so if you're thinking about like, I'm assuming when you say table, you're thinking of like a database table, right?
Yes.
So in that case, you're looking at something more sophisticated. I believe, I don't know if Microsoft has a demo for something like that, but there is an open source library called Llama Index, and these guys they created their own startup, and in part of their startup, they're also developing this library, and this library is open source, and they are creating these connectors to different databases. And what it does behind the scenes is that the library will extract the schema of the database, not the data, the schema of the database, so that the LLM understands the schema. And then based on what you talk, the library will also use the LLM to generate a SQL that is compatible with the engine and the schema. So you see what happens is not that I'm grabbing those tables or the data and creating embeddings so that then I can feed answers directly as tables into the LLM. What they're doing is, based on what you say, the LLM interprets that it needs to create a certain SQL. It sends there's code that will send that SQL to the database and then show the LLM the answer from the database, and you carry on the conversation, right? So, but that requires definitely more customization, more work. But check it out, Llama Index. If you search online, you'll be able to find their GitHub. I'm gonna put it in the chat. It's called like this, Llama Index. There's other libraries that are trying to do similar stuff like that. You might have heard some of them. There's some called LangChain. Microsoft is developing their own thing called semantic kernel. Like I said, the space is crazy, man. There's new stuff every day. So, it's kind of hard, kind of exciting at the same time. All
Yeah,
right. Let's see. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Andrew, go ahead. Maybe you want to say something else.
thank you. Thank you. Yeah, actually, my question is, I saw one of the document, Azure AI related document. So in the vector database, it's like if you are storing millions of record into one place, right? That is huge data. I mean, if you are storing as a embedded kind of things, is it storing like a tables wise internally? One table like a some amount of data, another table some amount of data, or all data?
Well, those are indexes. So they're indexes. So you can see here, if I go back, uh, let me share my screen again. I'll just show you kind of like how it's structured. Tabs. Where did it go? I'll just share my screen. Here, see, so I just have one index, but this is a search service, right? So if you were developing like different types of documents, you could create indexes for the different types of documents, right? So there's the AI search service, and inside the AI search service, you can create different indexes. This is I just named mine Azure Chat because I just use it for this chat app that Microsoft created. You can see here I only have indexed two documents, right? I'm only taking like 70K, but this is a full first party cloud service. You could index millions of documents if you wanted to. And storage size, I don't know what the limit is, but I'm gonna bet that it's probably, you know, pretty big in terms of the capability for storage for the Azure search service. Of course, once you get to that point, it's also not going to be cheap, right? You're going to be spending quite a bit of money on your search capabilities, right?
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. What else do we got? Should we learn all three AI platforms? If you have enough time in the day and you have enough coffee, I'm sure. Why not? It's just really hard. I'll tell you that. All right. How do you transfer yourself from DBA to AI consultant? Interesting journey. Well, I've stopped being a DBA a long time ago, but basically my career transition was I was a DBA, and then I stopped doing more like the day-to-day DBA, and I became more like a database consultant. And don't, so I kind of leverage that to branch out of just doing DBA stuff and doing data modeling or doing bigger like architecture in terms of like database systems architecture or doing analytics architecture as well. And once you're there, then it's not a huge leap to move into the AI piece too, right? Because a lot of this is all driven by the data that you have available. Very few companies are going to just deploy GPT and just talk to GPT, and GPT will have the answers for whatever enterprise use case they have, right? Most companies will say, oh, what I want is for GPT to be able to talk about my customer base, to look into my CRM data, to look into my proprietary transactions data. I want GPT to be able to look into my financial statements, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So I think, from the data to the AI piece is not a big leap. I think the biggest leap is to go from just being DBA and working day to day on things to more of a consulting role where you are helping people, implement a bigger picture, more like the architecture or road mapping and stuff like that. That took quite a bit of time. All right. Currently, went to a seminar. Currently, the model is based on historical data training. If historical data never exists, then the model will not generate the answer. Yes. For example, if a symptom of a disease, is it true for OpenAI? Yeah, so that's a great point. The model obviously depends on the data that it was trained on, and this is where this kind of like RAG or retrieval augmented generation approach has come in to make them more flexible, right? So to your point, let's say I'm a company and my knowledge base is internal and OpenAI has never seen it, so I can't ask GPT about my internal company procedures because GPT was never trained on those internal company procedures, right? So that's where I would have to have other things like the retrieval augmented generation, like using search indexes and stuff like that, to be able to give GPT some of the extra information. Now, whether GPT can take that extra information and then create a fully novel answer is up for debate, right? There's some people that say that, all these LM models do is just mix things based on patterns that they have already seen. Other people claim, especially on the latest models like GPT-4 Turbo, Claude 3, they claim that these models are able to create novel information. I don't know, I'm not a philosopher and I'm not that deep into like how they define all these things, but it's definitely getting, more and more powerful as time goes on. So yeah, there we go. What if data never exists on the? Oh, I just already covered this. You guys are talking about this. Oh, look here. Philip used the term philosophy as well, just like I did. Um, all right, we'll have a recording. Yes, we will. Don't worry, guys. All right, I guess that's it for today. Well, that's great. I love that we got so many questions. I know this is a huge topic, lots of interest. Hopefully, I'll be back. We'll talk more about this in like 2 weeks. Half of this will be outdated. Well, hopefully not, but maybe not too bad. Um, do I have any
We will make you a
workshops?
comeback.
Yeah, I'll have
Don't
to come
worry.
back for sure.
We will
Yeah.
call you to come back. I want to thank our speaker for today, Warner, for really great session. You can just check the chat, the amount of activities to understand how interesting this topic is and how good the session was. And of course, I want to thank all of you for joining us today. You can follow me, Anna Wikil, or Jen Joseph on social media to get update information regarding the community. But the most important is just check the community website for a list of upcoming events and news. Remember, if you want to speak in the weekly meeting or in the big event, the Future Data Driven Summit, call for speaker is open. Just go to the website and find the links or contact us. So again, thanks a lot, Warner. Great session. Think about having 75 minutes maybe in the Future Data Driven Summit.
Sounds good.
If you
Sounds
do,
good.
yeah, there is option for 55 like regular session, but this can fit for
Well, we
75
went,
minutes
yeah,
with no
we went
problem.
75 today. So yeah, that's true.
Okay, thanks a lot. Bye
Appreciate
bye,
everybody.
everyone.
Have a great day.
Thank you so much.